We've got a good old-fashioned blockbuster trade in the NFL. The Pittsburgh Steelers and the Miami Dolphins have gotten together in a three-player swap, some picks involved as well. What it means for Jalen Ramsey, Minkah Fitzpatrick, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Miami Dolphins. Coming at you on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Love and appreciate all the everydayers out there. Thanks for hanging with us as we get ready. And there's always some big news in the offseason. You never know when it's going to pop up. Pushing some other topics aside on today's program. So thanks for the everydayers. And if you're new to the program, coming just for this information, hang with us. We talk about the NFL every single day here on Peacock and Williamson's what we do all off-season and season long. So subscribe on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcasts. And Matt, this is one of those that very thankful, as some of our listeners have just tweeted at us. Hopefully you guys didn't record yet today. This wasn't one of those where 30 minutes after we're done recording, post a podcast and some big news happens. We got this one earlier this morning, at least on the West Coast here. And it is a blockbuster, and it involves the team you cover. We've talked a lot about in the last week or so. And I am shocked, not so much by the players the Dolphins sent, but by the player that the Pittsburgh Steelers sent. And so you're going to have a ton of insight for me and our listeners on this one. And here is the full details, according to Tom Pelissero and Ian Rappaport and all the insiders. The Dolphins have agreed to trade cornerback Jalen Ramsey, tight end Jonnu Smith, and a 2027 seventh-round pick to Pittsburgh in exchange for Minkah Fitzpatrick and a 2027 fifth-round pick. So they're swapping fifth and seventh-round picks in 2 drafts from now. This is the 2027 draft. The big pieces here is Jalen Ramsey and Minkah Fitzpatrick. Almost a one-for-one swap, because I don't think Jonnu Smith was worth all that much, to be honest with you. So I think we got to focus on the defensive backs for the most part, and we'll talk about the whole thing for both teams. But, man, what are your immediate reactions to this blockbuster trade, man?
Yeah, a lot going through my cranium at the moment. This pretty much just happened within the hour. And it's funny because Adam Schefter reported Steelers are trading for Jalen Ramsey, and there are no other, details about it. So I run and do this emergency podcast for this local group I work for, DK Pittsburgh Sports. You can find those podcasts there. It's like 7 minutes, just immediate reaction. And during those 7 minutes, it comes out all the details you just mentioned. So I basically just threw that one away and hit record again as soon as I finished it again.
Changes things quite a bit.
It does. I mean, immediately when I thought it was just Ramsey being added to the team and that was all, I went on this long rave because I've been talking about this for 3 months, to be honest with you. People that follow me, especially in that forum, I was way ahead of the Ramsey thing on the Steelers. This is something I would pursue in a big way. He would be their slot. They're not going to win games 35-38 this year. They have to be a defensive-minded team, especially for next year when the new quarterback comes into play. And I think that's very much in the mix here. And I thought the defense was basically complete minus a slot corner/corner depth. And I kept saying, well, let's get greedy and go get the best guy you possibly can for those things. Don't just get some, fill-in slot corner. Get a difference maker that can do all those things for you. Now, I thought Minkah was going to be part of that equation.
Right.
But without him, I think a huge thing here is, first of all, you had to make some salary cap space. I mean, there's going to be a little bit of dead money, and it's not like Minkah had to go. I think Ramsey had to go. I think Jonnu Smith was at a contract impasse with the Dolphins, and I don't think he's a throw-in, at least for the Steelers' perspective, but we'll talk about him too. The Steelers, I think we talked about this. I think they have the best defensive line in the league. We talked about their edge guys being right at the top of the league. Now you mix in Benton, Hayward, Harmon. Pro Football Focus ranked them the number 1 D-line in the league. And for 5 of the last 7 years, I think, they led the league in sacks. This last year, they were middle of the road. Now they were good in pressures. They caused a lot of turnovers. They batted a lot of passes at the line of scrimmage. But their corner play, other than Porter, was very soft. It was a lot of cover 3. Quarterbacks like Mahomes and actually Rodgers, when he played them, just got the ball out of their hands so quick that the pass rush got nullified. So a huge thing I've been preaching is, how can you make that best D-line in the league into 50-plus sacks? Well, you got to change your coverages. You can't play as much zone. You can't play as much cover 3, cover 1. You need to vary things up a lot. And I think when they got Slay, that was a huge indication they were looking to do that. And I love Minkah, and he's going to be missed around here. He's really popular. I understand that. But his biggest role here, times 1,000, was he was basically the best deep middle player in the league. I mean, he was a free safety, and they were at the top of the league in single high, almost by a wide margin. And I think they realized we need to kind of catch up with the times, play more cover 2, a lot more Fangio cover 4, vary our coverages a lot more press man, so that we can feast even more in the pass rush department, because we are taking the ball away. We're batting down passes. We're leading the league in forced fumbles. We should also lead the league in sacks. And I've been saying this since the buzzer ended when they got eliminated, that goal number 1 on defense has to get back to leading the league in sacks. And Minkah would help that, of course. But I think the varied coverage situation has a lot has a ton to do with this deal. They were very predictable, 3 high, 1 single high, middle of the field closed. And I've been around Mike, and surprisingly, he's brought up Ramsey over the years. He adores him. I mean, unsolicited, he's brought up Jalen Ramsey's name a couple times in front of people or not, just when I've been around him. And I think they look at him like he's Charles Woodson, like he's just going to be a slot nickel linebacker, blitzer. Maybe he's eventually going to be the safety like Rod Woodson and Charles Woodson were. I mean, I think that's where his career is going. So in the end, just on that side of the ball, you got a little older, which is worrisome. This is like one of the oldest, and it's definitely the most expensive defense in the league. And that's not even signing Watt, which is going to happen any minute now too. That I think you're looking at Ramsey as an upgrade at a position that's harder to find than Minkah, a much more variety of coverages. He eventually will be a safety within a year or 2, but really jack of all trades, and they didn't have that guy. So just on defense, I think they got better.
Okay, I want to talk a little bit more specifics about the Steelers' new look secondary. Jonnu Smith, Minkah Fitzpatrick, how he fits with the Miami Dolphins. The first part of this, though, that we've got to get out of the way here with Minkah, and you talked about how he will be missed. Was there anything else there? Was it like contract-wise? Was it personality-wise? Was there a reason? Like, Minkah started in Miami too, right?
Right.
Had some problems there with, was it Brian Flores at the time was the head coach? I don't remember what the issue was with Minkah and the Dolphins early on in his career, but it's odd that they're bringing him back. He would have seemed like one of the players that the Pittsburgh Steelers wouldn't be willing to move, just the way that the Steelers do things. Is there anything else?
Think so either. I didn't think so either. I mean, I know he, as was a lot of Steelers defenders, were very frustrated of how the season ended. There were more coverage busts late in the year, and I don't blame him for it, but he's the quarterback back there. I don't think there was any unrest or he's demanding a trade or anything like that. He definitely wanted out of Miami way back when, because frankly, they were tanking for Tua, and that's not his style. Like he hated that whole approach, and they were like making him play linebacker and take on guards, and he looked at it,
That's the thing. If I'm not mistaken, he didn't like dropping down, but it sounds to me like the Dolphins needed a player that could do that and drop down, maybe play a little bit more slot, which means you're taking on guys when you're covering other positions. You're not playing deep as much. And it sounds like the Steelers now want that same thing. And maybe Minkah didn't like doing that. They thought he wasn't a good fit doing it. Jalen Ramsey's perfectly fit doing that now as someone who could play some safety, but can cover in the nickel, can move around. And so is it just as simple as the fit? They needed a guy who could cover closer to the line of scrimmage rather than a deep player.
The Steelers, you mean?
Yeah, for the Steelers.
I think so. And I just think that Steeler fans are having a hard time embracing this, but Omar Khan is now the general manager. This is his third year. He is a salary cap guy. I mean, that is his background in a big way. He is not a tape grinder. For all of our lifetime, the GM has been a tape grinder, former scout, and they're much more financially, analytically inclined now. I bet it bothered Omar that, man, we're spending like $25 million on a safety. Like I can go get one for. He just signed Elliott 2 days ago or something for $5. I think it was.
Right.
We want to use our money differently.
Now you know why.
Right, exactly. Right.
And the one with Thornhill thing too. So
they're okay at safety.
Yeah, more on the Steelers, more on the Dolphins, and how this all comes together, and how it could be weird in the future because of something you just said as well that I've got to talk about with Ramsey and how expensive he is next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Monarch Money. And if you're like me and you ever wish managing money felt maybe a little bit easier, Monarch Money, it can help you do so many things. It is your personal CFO, whether you're growing your savings, planning on a big purchase, whether you're early in your savings journey, maybe you're looking at towards retirement, maybe it's college, maybe it's a new home, maybe it's that vacation home, maybe you're trying to level up, right? Monarch puts you in the driver's seat, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. Track all your accounts, investments, spending, all in one place. So important. Shared accounts as well with your partner. Make things smooth and easy in that regard as well. And in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. And so if you ever feel like you wish you had more control and you wish you had all your accounts and spending in one place, Monarch Money is for you. And what's, maybe that big goal for me was, got to buy a home, and you got a kid now. And so you got to start looking, there starts to be all these different buckets where it's not about just going and getting dinner. It's not about just buying a car. You got to look towards so many things into the future when you're building your family. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. The Steelers might need Monarch Money to make sure they got enough to spend on Jalen Ramsey, because here's the question I have. So if you don't want an expensive safety, and Jalen Ramsey's a future safety, you have a expensive future safety. So how is that?
Maybe. Yeah.
That's one question I have about this, because if Ramsey eventually, and I totally agree, that's the style of player he is. Probably will transition into. And I don't know when that's going to be, and maybe that doesn't matter because then they don't want him anymore. Maybe he has to sign a new deal with a new team at that point. Where for the short term, they see this other player, because I wouldn't imagine if they don't want to pay Minkah to be an expensive safety, Jalen Ramsey is going to want the same contract he has right now as he transitions into safety in a couple of years.
Yeah, that I don't have an answer for. I mean, I do think that is Ramsey's career arc, much like the Woodsons, that I think he's big and physical and smart enough and all that stuff to be a safety full time if he wants. And in the meantime, he does safety stuff. I mean, I think if, people are like, well, the Steelers better sign a safety. I'm like, yeah, maybe they will, but he can do some of the Minkah stuff in the meantime, or be your third guy, cover tight ends. I don't know about the future. I mean, I think for now, you get a year or two of him doing this stuff, all the above, the multifaceted Brian Branch, older version guy. And if he's going to transition to safety, maybe you say, that's great, but we'll give you 10 million, not 20, or whatever it is, and you cross that bridge when you come to it. I don't have that answer, to be honest with you, but it's a good question.
So got cheaper at safety. Now the current starting safeties, if you're wondering, for the Pittsburgh Steelers, that Juan Thornhill signing starts to look pretty interesting too, because it wasn't really a big move.
Under the radar move, yeah.
And as you mentioned, they just added Deshaun Elliott to be the
extended him,
or extended him, yeah. So now you have your pair of safeties there, Deshaun Elliott and Juan Thornhill. Juan Thornhill's been a starting safety in the NFL. And now you have Jalen Ramsey added to cornerbacks Darius Slay, who was added this offseason, and Joey Porter Jr. And that would mean that it would seem to me that clearly Jalen Ramsey is the nickel player. Is it a nickel all the time defense, or is this Jalen Ramsey's kind of going to bounce around, maybe play some outside, move inside, maybe start playing some safety right away?
I think the two players they acquired will play a lot of different roles. But we'll spend a little bit of time on Jonnu, but obviously Ramsey's the bigger one. What I don't know, and maybe they don't even know at this minute, is in their base 3-4 with two corners on the field, who's not going to be out there? I don't know that answer.
Because Ramsey has to play.
I assume Slay would be on the bench, but I don't think it'd be Porter. Porter's has been their one since he's been drafted. He's done a lot of shadowing, actually, which teams never do anymore, and I think he'll do less of that. I also think these two are great influences on Porter too. I think that's a great role model situation. I don't know when two corners are on the field who will be those two, or will there always be those three and you take Thornhill off the field? I don't know. I think that's a good problem to have, but they've been pretty predictable on defense. I think they'll be much less predictable.
Now taking a look at the Jonnu Smith edition, and I kind of talked about how it's really kind of felt like a not necessarily a throw-in, but that they were taking on a player that maybe his name value didn't match what the value he was going to have around the league to other teams. And I want to talk about the tight end. So we're definitely going to talk Dolphins as well here, but I want to focus on the new Steelers here before we move on to the new Dolphins and what the Dolphins might still be looking for to replace Jonnu Smith at tight end, according to a new report. But the Steelers have a very full room of tight ends, but what they don't have is someone shaped and skilled like Jonnu Smith. So it's Pat Freiermuth starting tight end, Darnell Washington, who's massive and the size of an offensive tackle, and maybe that's why you needed someone that's a little bit more
you
like
should
Jonnu
see him in
Smith.
person. He looks like an offensive tackle. Yeah,
huge human being. Connor Hayward is there as well, an oddly shaped guy, kind of more H-back, full type of a body, and so Jonnu Smith comes in and is more the receiving version of a tight end. So talk to me about the fit for Jonnu Smith and the value there. And there was a report that now they gave him a 1-year extension, which I think was kind of the hang up. It still seems to me like it was Ramsey for Minkah, and then they just threw a little bit extra in the pick realm for Jonnu Smith for the right to just pay him that the Dolphins did not want to pay him.
Well, I should have opened the show by saying you have to look at this trade through the lens of future cap space. The Steelers have a ton. The Dolphins have none. So one of these teams has money and one doesn't.
Cap.
Right. So there's a Watt trade or there's a Watt contract coming that'll mess that up a little bit too. But one team has a ton to spend. One team has none. And the Steelers also have a ton of future picks with comp stuff. And so they have a lot of future resources. Miami doesn't. So they're in two different ballparks. So I think it was pretty clear that Ramsey had to go. They told him, you can skip minicamp. We won't fine you. And we can't really afford to extend Jonnu. The ball's going to go to Tyreek and Waddle. And Jonnu was a really big contributor for them last year. I mean, he caught a lot of passes, highly productive, very fantasy relevant. Now, I don't think he'll do that in Pittsburgh. They won't throw the ball as much. He won't be, nearly the targeted player. But in terms of Jonnu's fit with the Steelers, first of all, him and Arthur Smith are joined at the hip because Jonnu followed Smith from Tennessee to Atlanta, and now he follows them here. So there's a massive connection there. Arthur Smith is very much a multiple tight end team. The Steelers were the highest 3 tight ends, 13 personnel grouping in the whole league last year. That was without Jonnu Smith, and they're very close to the top in 12 personnel. So they're short a receiver, especially after trading Pickens, and they need every pass catcher they can get. And they already play more 12 and 13 than most teams. Kind of like your Ramsey corner question, when there's two tight ends on the field, I don't know which two it'll be. I mean, I don't think Washington's coming off because he is a nightmare to play against for as much as they want to run the ball and is an emerging player. I thought he was like the Steelers' most improved player last year. I think they're just looking for weapons. They have the cap space. Immense familiarity with the player. Smith and Smith are buddies. And they're already still rumored to, they might just sign Gabe Davis to add one more receiver too.
That was my
something
question.
like that.
Was this the receiver move? This is kind of your big slot. Like, don't even think of him as a tight end. You got two tight ends. This is not an inline tight end. This is a big slot receiver.
He's a lot different than Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, he's 50 pounds heavier.
He's a bigger body person. Right. You put Jonnu Smith in there. And so I wonder if this is the end for the Steelers as far as their pass catchers. You probably think they might add a player in the realm of not a big swing, but just another body to compete with Roman Wilson and Robert Woods and Calvin Austin in the mix at wide receiver. And Ben Skoranek and Scotty Miller and
Miller will make the team. Skoranek's a core special teamer. Same with Connor Hayward. That's their role. And
don't sleep on my guy Montana Luminius Craig either.
I don't know where Robert Woods fits in, but I would think like a Gabe Davis would be there. Like, I don't think I'm divulging any secrets, but he was visiting one of the days I was down there doing minicamp, and he was walking around in a Steeler t-shirt. Like, I don't know if that's how free agent visits usually work or not.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a feeling he had like pass a physical, and so something like that could absolutely be in the cards, which it would make sense. He's kind of the Mooney for Arthur Smith's Atlanta, the field stretcher. Right. He blocks. He's not going to play 50% of the snaps. Him and Austin will split. And if you have Jonnu Smith, I'm fine with that. I mean, if they didn't have Jonnu Smith, Gabe Davis isn't good enough for me. You better add something better than that, because you're one Metcalf injury away from being very easy to play against.
Right. Yeah. So depth kind of the thing there. You still don't really have in Roman Wilson, and you kind of do know what you have in Calvin Austin. Nice player. Yeah. Probably don't want
better last year too. They like him.
You don't want to rely on him though being more than the number 3, and even number 4 is even better. And then obviously Robert Woods, we know what he is. So, and
Wilson and Austin are going to make the team, so I don't want any more 5'8" guys.
Yes, yeah.
You know what I mean?
And slot guys. You got big slots, small slots. You got all the slots covered, offense and defense now. So slot is set for the Pittsburgh.
Maybe they sign Amari Cooper. I mean, they could do something like that too.
Next, let's talk Miami Dolphins. What this means for them. Bring in Minkah Fitzpatrick back like he was never gone. Next. So Minkah Fitzpatrick, the latest Miami Dolphin here. Very interesting that they wanted to add a player, and it wasn't just picks. The Dolphins still a competitive football team and still trying to win now. You mentioned a big part of this. When you look at it, you have to look at salary cap, and that was a huge part of it. But before we get to the Minkah side of things, I just want to talk about Jonnu Smith really quick. And clearly Ramsey and Jonnu Smith have been in the newspapers, right, as guys that were going to be traded. We're just trying to figure out where that was going to be and what was going to happen there, which is why I think you didn't really have to pay that big of a price for Jonnu Smith. And I think Jalen Ramsey was a player that they were just not going to give away. And obviously you did pay a price for Jalen Ramsey. So when you look at Jonnu Smith, Tom Pelissero, just before we started recording, had a report that now that they have traded Jonnu Smith, the Miami Dolphins are calling teams for a tight end. So they just created a new hole on their football team. So clearly it was not so much that they were getting rid of an extra tight end that they didn't need. It was specifically Jonnu Smith, who they either didn't want to pay or didn't need to have him around specifically anymore, and now need to replace him in their offense with another tight end. So that's an interesting wrinkle there for the Miami Dolphins as we head toward camp. And by the way, also Tom Pelissero retweeted a tweet from Tyreek Hill that I'm looking at right now, which is the classic meme of Will Smith, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, when he's standing in the living room and all the furniture's gone and he's by himself and he's looking around all sad with a teary-eyed emoji. So that's Tyreek Hill right now. Some of these guys are gone.
Well, I do think Miami's on the hot seat. I don't think Tyreek's on the move at this point, I'm not sure why you'd bother trading for Minkah or trying to get another tight end if you were trying to tank. I don't think these guys are on the hot seat. They're not trying to tank. I think a lot of it comes down to money. That they just gave Jonnu $12 million. The Steelers did. He put another year on his contract. I assume Miami didn't think that he was either worth that or they didn't have enough to give him. Maybe they're after like a Michael Mayer, like somebody like on his first contract, or a Musgrave or somebody like that. That would make sense financially. That
would make perfect sense. And I'm looking at their tight end room. Unlike the Steelers, they didn't have a couple of guys already. They've got their starter is Pharaoh Brown, who's been around for a long time. Julian Hill, who I wouldn't recognize if I passed him on the street. Tanner Connor, and Hayden Rugiet. That's their tight end room right now.
They better add somebody, right?
But I'm surprised they didn't try to bring somebody in first, or maybe they just had to do this move before they could bring in even. They didn't draft anybody either. I don't think. Did they? Did they draft
so.
these guys? Are these rookies? I don't think they are.
No, none of them are drafted,
and they didn't dip into that group.
I would think there's another shoe to drop for them. Now, what do you think about them getting Minkah, though? I mean, they lost Javon Holland, who I think is the most similar safety in the league to Minkah, and that was a big loss. And I do think Minkah is a strong culture guy. He's a tough guy. He is a no-nonsense human being. I think Miami is trying to change their culture a little bit. Like they did that when they brought in the Bills safety last year. Everyone kind of knows they get soft as the season gets on. And, they added some big people finally in the trenches with their first few draft picks. And instead of just drafting running backs that run real fast. So I think they're realizing they need to toughen up for late season stuff. And their safety room was as bad as that tight end room before this trade too. I mean, it was pretty hideous. But I assume that they also, some of this is contract. Like the Steelers just can't be like, we'll take all 3 big contracts and give you draft picks. I assume that somebody had to move. I
would think they might need to add corners too. Like this is so
their depth chart's weird overall.
Patrick really stands out in this group now.
The secondary's terrible.
Who's the big loser in all this is probably Minkah feeling
Minkah, right?
I wanted out of this team already. I just got traded here, unless maybe
totally new regime, but still.
Yeah, maybe behind the scenes he didn't love it in Pittsburgh either. So who knows?
I don't think I'd be blown away if that's an issue, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
but his production here did go down. I mean, he had a lot of picks his first year, and then I don't think he's a lesser player, but the back of his football card doesn't look as good.
Here is the secondary now for the new look Dolphins. Yeah. You got Minkah Fitzpatrick at free safety. You got Ifeatu Melifonwu starting next to him. They brought in Ashton Davis, former Cal guy, Dante Trader Jr. So, that's kind of their depth there at safety, but clearly, that's something that they did need. But they're corners now. I mean, you got Storm Duck on one side. You got Jason Marshall Jr. on the other side. Cater Kuhu as the nickel corner. You got Cam Smith, Artie Burns. I don't know. That's a rough group. And just throwing Minkah Fitzpatrick in the middle of that, I don't know if it's going to help.
No, I mean, if you knew Ramsey was leaving, at least you get one quality defensive back. I think they have one quality defensive back. It's pretty rough.
They were underrating some of these other guys, but
maybe. But I mean, Artie Burns' story's been written, and
and obviously the first rounder Kenneth Grant added to Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb and Chopper.
Looks good.
So it's all about that front seven. If they can't get it done, they can't get home. You got Minkah Fitzpatrick over the top, but it's still a worrisome group there. Just a weird team build right now for the Miami Dolphins. So
even before this trade, I thought there were tough times ahead for Miami.
Yeah. The Steelers were in a lot better place post-trade and probably pre-trade too, but you just created 2 new holes for the Miami Dolphins. Whereas I feel like the Steelers were prepared and in a place where they could replace Minkah Fitzpatrick and feel all right. And obviously you got a really good player in that same secondary. For the Dolphins, not so sure.
Like the Dolphins would kill for a Thornhill right now, who's not a difference maker. But like if you go from Minkah to Thornhill, you go backwards for sure. But you really upgraded to corner, where Miami's just kind of shuffling the chairs a little bit, and just as a secondary as a whole. I
something you brought up, and I don't remember if it was at the beginning of this podcast or was off the air. It's just safeties are easier to find. They're cheaper.
I tweeted that 5 minutes ago. It's just, it's just I'm sure it's an Omar Khan situation that if you take a second round safety next year, you'll probably be pretty happy with them and they'll be cheap. You know what I mean?
Did they do enough to save their jobs in Miami? I don't think.
I would bet no.
I don't think tight end is a huge problem.
No, they'll work around that. I mean, they didn't have any tight end production 2 years ago when they were a great offense with Tyreek and Waddle. Right. And a channel catch a ton of balls.
And I just think the way that Mike McDaniels coordinates an offense, I think he can create for that player that is playing there when needed. And
they didn't use Jonnu as an inline hammer blocker either. You know, he was a third receiver for them too.
Right. And they'll add a guy.
Yeah, Malik Washington will step up or something like that.
So,
or,
we'll find out what's going on there. But Tyreek Hill,
I'm not real worried about their offense. I just don't like their roster and team building strategy as a whole, and their money situation is really bad right now too. And it has been. It's a little better, but it's bad.
Yeah, and you start to see it when you start going chasing stars and everything starts to get very expensive. You do have a ripple at some point. We're starting to see that, and Tyreek Hill might be next. I don't think it's necessarily going to be this offseason, but he's been rumored as part of this, and it hasn't been such an obvious. They did a contract thing with him where it's like, okay, now it's going to be next year instead, right? Isn't that what it was? With
I think so, but if the season starts off bad, he could be a trade deadline guy,
and so could Minkah. To be honest,
right? I guess you're probably
be another zip cord that they pull if they do decide they want to blow this up.
Let's just give me a bunch of picks. That could be the case. I don't know, because it's not like they gave him a roster. They didn't change Minkah's contract at all.
Yeah, interesting place that the Miami Dolphins are in right now. And
I don't love their situation.
Don't love it. Could go in a lot of directions here in 2025 when we start talking about what things look like in 2026. So let us know what you think about the big trade at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Drop a comment or a question on YouTube. Get involved in our mailbag as well this week. And, of course, subscribe while you're there. Matt and I back tomorrow. We're talking Falcons, former Arthur team with Aaron Freeman of Locked On Falcons. We're going to be talking fantasy football wide receivers. That's going to be a two-parter because there are so many guys. That trade might have shaken up a little bit of that mix. And, of course, a whole lot more every single day right here. Peacock and Williamson.